Who's the favorite to end up coming out of the Western Conference based on team composition? We're going to go through part 2 of our 2-part series. Yesterday, we covered the East. The video will be linked after this video, so you can go watch it once we're done talking about the West. But we're going to take a look at the 9 Western Conference teams that have the opportunity to play in the playoffs. 7 are locked in. 2 spots are being competed for. That is, in my opinion, between LA and the Vegas Golden Knights for 3rd position in the Pacific. So let's go ahead. Let's go through those 9 teams, and let's break down by pulling up our 10 requirements and refresh your memory in case you didn't watch our Eastern video yesterday of what is required team composition wise to get to the Stanley Cup. We have 10 needs listed in order of importance by Coach Ryan D. We've modified this list from The Athletic. We're going to use advanced analytics and our trained coach's eye to walk through it. I'm going to answer some questions that came up in the comments yesterday from our Eastern Conference video. So again, to remind you, you need an elite centerman. You need an elite number 1 D-man. You only need a top 10 goalie, not a franchise goalie. You need an elite winger to play with that elite centerman. You need 2 top wingers after that elite winger in your top 6. You need a top line center. That means you need 2 number 1 centers on the team in order to carry you to a cup final. You need 2 top forwards in the middle 6. So we're talking about your depth and your 3rd line at that point. And then you need defensive depth. You need a number 1 defenseman partnered with your elite defenseman. You need a number 1 defenseman playing in the 2nd pair, and you need a number 1 caliber defenseman playing in your 3rd pair. Biggest question I got yesterday is, Ryan, you've always said build from the net out, so why are defensemen low on your list and why is it so forward heavy? When you get to the playoffs, it's a different animal team. You have to remember defensive depth is important, but at the end of the day, you really can get away with running 2 to 3 defensemen massively through the minutes, and they can play most of the games. As long as they don't get injured, they'll carry you the whole way. Duncan Keith was able to play 32 minutes on average for the Chicago Blackhawks. Drew Doughty, same thing with the LA Kings. Your number 1 defenseman is going to eat up 50% of your minutes, and that means 50% of the ice time that's available out there is going to be distributed amongst your next 5 defensemen. So your depth of forwards is so important. Your top 9 forwards going into the playoffs are massive. Having a 4th line that can go ahead and take some minutes away is important, but it isn't as important as people think. It's a luxury. So when you think of the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Montreal Canadiens last year, both had great 4th lines. A 4th line itself is not going to win you a Stanley Cup, but it's a nice luxury to have, especially if you have injuries in your top 9. So you really need to have a solid, dominant top 9. You need to have a 3rd line that really is behaving like a 2nd or a 1st line in the NHL. And you need to have that 2nd pairing defensive group that doesn't get scored on when the number 1 defenseman isn't on the ice. So that 50% of the time your number 1 horse isn't out there, you got to make sure you have a 2nd pairing guy out there that can take those minutes away. And that 3rd pairing guy just doesn't get scored on. So yes, build from the net out is important, but hey, coach is going to tell you, they are really going to run 2 to 3 defensemen maximum. They're going to run hard minutes in the playoffs. Forward depth and being able to cycle those forwards matters a lot more as long as you have those big horses on the back end. That's why the list is ordered this way. And don't forget that our channel is sponsored by BetUS. Head over to betus.com. Use the code HDS. Link is down below. All proceeds go to help this channel. You get 125% deposit bonus to bet on the Stanley Cup and to bet on hockey. Go check it out. Support your guy, Coach Ryan D. I'm over there. It's a great site to use. All right, so let's start in the Central Division with the Colorado Avalanche. They're going to check 9 or 8, depending on as we go through these boxes. McKinnon's an elite center. We all know that. Nothing to talk about. Makar's an elite defenseman. We all know that. Kemper's a top 10 goalie. We all know that. But, you know, he may be a top 10 goalie just because he plays on Colorado. Regardless, he's in the top 10. Rantanen is absolutely an elite winger. This team is just stacked. 2 top wingers after that. Landeskog, will he be back from injury? That's why there's a question on it, as well as Burakovsky. So Landeskog, Burakovsky, they absolutely check this list. Top center, it's shocking. I hate him. I don't want to do it. But Kadri checks the box. Kadri's a top center playing on the 2nd line. Nichushkin checks the box here for number 7, which is 2 top forwards in the middle 6. And then it falls off. When you take a look at the Colorado Avalanche, and there's going to be a lot of Avs fans on here whose head explodes, it really does fall off after that. After Nichushkin, I don't see any depth in the Avalanche there that I'm going to sing and write home praises about. So I'm going to walk you over here to evolvehockey.com. We're going to sort this by goals above replacement. And when you take a look here, you can see it from McKinnon all the way up to Rantanen. Everybody has a wonderful goals above replacement. This is the gold standard for how our players doing in the season. And then it falls off a cliff. Oh my God, the team's terrible. So you too can head over to evolvinghockey.com. You can fact check me all you want. But after Nichushkin, it falls off. So if there's any injuries in the top 6, Colorado could be in a little bit of trouble here. Hey, look, they look really good on paper right now, but that depth really isn't there on the third line. When you go ahead and take a look at their defensemen, Jack Johnson is not a number one D-man, partnered up there with Cale Makar. Cale Makar carries them. I don't care if you pick Eric Johnson or Jack Johnson. No Johnson is going to check that box, but Devon Toews definitely checks that box. He's a very good defenseman. He's top 30 in the league. And then Girard and Byram, they absolutely check the box too. Defensive depth is one of the strengths of the Colorado Avalanche. This is why they're one of the favorites for the Cup. Next up is a team that's basically built on all depth. It's a different team composition from the Colorado Avalanche completely. It's the Minnesota Wild. This is a team with a bunch of non-superstars. It's just a good group that works together. So they're not going to check a whole bunch of boxes because we're talking about elite and the best of the best when we end up getting into lists like this. And frankly, this is just a team that's pretty good all around. Is Ryan Hartman an elite centerman? Nope. Is he a good centerman? Yep. Jared Spurgeon, one of the most underrated defensemen in the league. He is absolutely elite. Marc-Andre Fleury, even though he isn't in the top 10 right now for rankings, you cannot consider Fleury not a top 10 goalie going into these playoffs. All the guy does is win Stanley Cups and get to finals, so he's checking this box. Great trade by Minnesota. Kirill Kaprizov, maybe one of the best, if not the best wingers in the NHL right now, so he definitely checks the elite winger box. Zuccarello and Boldy, hey, they check that box as well too. We're looking at depth. But then when you go down from there, their top line centers, and you guys are going to hate this. It's like I don't like any of their centers. Gaudreau and Ek, they don't check the box. They're not number one. So they have three centers that do not check the box for elite or number one centers. They're good. They're fine. They're just not checking the box, but that doesn't mean they're bad. If you go over again to Evolving Hockey, you can see they're pretty good. They're definitely in the top 60. They're just not making it into the top 30. Is it good enough to win a cup? Time will have to tell, but the team is not a slouch, but they can't check the box for me. Greenway and Fiala absolutely check the box in the middle six for me, so they get that check. But when you look at their defensemen, it's very surprising to think that, wow, it doesn't look like they're checking a lot of boxes, and they're not. Middleton isn't checking the box. Dumba isn't checking the box. Goligoski and Merrill definitely are. I feel like I'm going to have to show you guys a lot more proof for the West, because the West is just a weaker division than the East. Hard stop. These teams are not as good as what's over there in the East. And again, if we take a look at the defensemen over here in Minnesota, some Wild fans may be saying, you're crazy, Coach Ryan D. They're better than you think. I am not. Goligoski in the back end is your best defenseman right now by rating. Jared Spurgeon is number one, of course, but Goligoski playing out of his tree. Then John Merrill again playing out of his tree. And then it falls off a cliff again. Everybody's mediocre. Ah! And that's just the reality. Numbers don't lie. And when you watch the tape too, it's the same thing. So if you're a fan of the Wild and you think they're great, you just have a hometown bias right now. Those guys are fine, but there's a lot of holes. And you're going to notice this, Wild fans and Western Conference fans, there's a lot of holes all over this conference. It is absolutely compared to the East this year. And that's not just because I'm a Jets fan and they're out. The Jets are double this year because they couldn't even win in this division of Feel good yet after that one? All right, let's continue on with the Central Division. Minnesota, it's a fine team. No superstars. Fleury can take them as far as they want to go. St. Louis, the team I'm calling pretenders, and I'm sticking to that. When you look at St. Louis's advanced analytics, it is ugly. This team has one of the worst Corsies, one of the worst shooting percentages in the NHL. They're below the top 25 worst teams in the NHL, meaning they're in the bottom 7. They're doing it with smoke and mirrors. But when you look at their lineup on paper, it looks pretty good. And that's what this exercise is lineups on paper. Ryan O'Reilly is absolutely an elite center. Check that box. Torrey Krug is not an elite defenseman. He's a good defenseman. He's not an elite defenseman. So offense of capacities aside, I don't think he's going to check that box for elite number 1 D-men. There are 10 D-men in the league. I'd way rather have over Krug. Top 10 goalie. Husso is. Binnington is not. So if Ville is in, everything's looking good. If Binnington gets starts, yeah, it's not going to be good. So depends who is going to end up starting there. Elite winger, Tarasenko. I struggled to check this box. He's having a good year points wise. It's not as dominant of a year as you'd expect from Tarasenko when you look at the advanced analytics, but we still have to check the box. He's still an elite scorer, point per game guy. 2 top wingers, Buchnevich and Saad. So Saad. They absolutely are checking the box for us. Thomas checks the box. They're number 1 centerman right now. Reverse it. I don't know why O'Reilly's playing in the 2-hole. Thomas is playing in the 1-hole. O'Reilly's the better center. Whatever. Their line competition, it works. They're in the playoffs. It is what it is. But I have to say O'Reilly's the elite player. Thomas is the good player. But it doesn't matter what order you put these guys in. They have 2 really good centermen, Kyrou and Perron. So Perron, Kyrou, very good. They're going to check the box. Colton Parayko is having a career year. Parayko looks awesome. He is absolutely a number one D-man, partnered there with Torrey Krug. He's not elite either, so you could flip Krug and Parayko. You're still only going to get one check mark. It doesn't matter how you flip this. Justin Falk is absolutely a number one defense playing down there. So if you're going to have Krug and Parayko logging big minutes, Falk's lineup is going to be logging big minutes as well. And then anyone else after the top four falls off a cliff. I don't like any of the depth after those four. But again, we said it. All you need is 3 when it comes to defensemen to win a Stanley Cup. So, hey, the Blues could do it. I just don't like their chances at all. I think they're pretenders. Their Corsi is terrible. Nashville Predators. Hey, look, this team's actually better than people give them credit for. Again, the struggle with the Western Conference here is the lack of center depth. You can see the East just dominates down the middle. The West just doesn't have elite dynamic centermen like the East does right now. Yes, I know McDavid's over here. Every division has some really good players, McDavid and McKinnon, but when you go ahead and look at the East and the stacked teams over there, their center depth is way higher. And you can see that here. Ryan Johansson, or Rhino Johansson, as I love to call him, as well as Mikael Granlund. Neither of them are going to check the box for top centerman in the league or elite centerman in the league. Roman Josi absolutely checks the box for an elite defenseman. UC Saros will always check the box for an elite goaltender or a top 10 goaltender, but the guy's elite. Philip Forsberg, again, one of the best wingers in the league, right up there with Kaprizov, so he's going to check that box for us. Tomasino and Duchesne check that box. Duchesne's having just a career resurgence, moving over to the wing on the second line here with Nashville. He's doing great. Jeanot and Tolvanen, they check the box, so the depth is there. It's the defensive pairings that start falling off. So Fabro with Josi, he's not going to check that box. But again, we're talking about 3 defensemen. So when you go down and look at Elcom and Carrier, both of them check the box. They're both number 1 D playing in the second pairing. So between Josi, Elcom, and Carrier, you have the 3 big names that are going to carry you through there. And after that, it falls off again. But again, you only need 3. So you're missing the center depth here. Your team depth and your winger depth is very good. Your goaltender is excellent. And your top 3 defensemen, as always, Nashville, are world class. So they have a chance. And then finally, we move over to the Dallas Stars, who I think will absolutely lock into this wild card spot. Rupert Hintz. Look, I don't know if Hintz is a lead or not. I think he is, so I'm checking the box. Hintz is going to be there. He's just a damn good player. The first line for the Dallas Stars is probably the best first line right now. Wow, man, that's tough. That's tough. I don't know. Calgary's first line is better. Colorado's is good. This is a damn good first line, though. Like, there are a couple really good first lines here in the West. It's just a depth challenge. So Hintz is an excellent centerman right now for Dallas. Heiskanen is absolutely an elite defenseman. The strength for Dallas lies in its defense. Goaltender Ottinger, I don't want to give it to him. He's outside the top 10, but if you want to give it to him, you can give it to him. So go ahead, check the box. I'm going to put that as a 50-50. He's like number 16. So if he's heating up as it's going into the playoffs, yeah, he may sneak into the top 10. He's good enough to win a cup. So I don't know which way I go on that. I'm just going to fence it on that one. Elite winger Jason Robertson is absolutely an elite winger. There's no question about that. I mean, the guy's dynamic. He's an absolute monster. And then you go ahead and you take a look at Pavelski, who's also an elite winger still. But Ben and Gernerdov, no, they're not. And it hurts my feelings because I really love Jamie Benn. He's one of my favorite players of all time. I love the way he plays, but the captain just isn't having a good year this year. When you look at advanced analytics, he's totally replaceable. Like, it's just, it really falls off after the first line for Dallas right now. They have an excellent first line. Line 2 and line 3 just crash and burn. There's a lot of big names on there, like Sagan, like Ben. And you're like, oh my God, this team on paper, if it could just get it together, but that's just not how the playoffs work. You got to let go of big names when they start sliding down. And right now, they're just sliding down. So their first line, super, super duper dynamic. Their defense, excellent. Their goaltender, middle of the road. Their depth totally falls off. Ryan Suter is still a very good defenseman. Lindell and Klingberg, they're absolutely just studs back there. So you have 4 stud defensemen. I mean, even the guys in their third pairing are just, they're playing out of their tree. So Dallas is going to win this with top defensemen if they're going to do it. I don't think they're going to. I think you need way more than what Dallas has here. But hey, that's the state of the Dallas Stars right now. Great first line, no depth. Moving on to the pride of the West. And no, I don't think it's the Colorado Avalanche. I do think it's the Calgary Flames. When you look at the Flames roster, there isn't a hole. This team is just amazing. It's an amazing team. The challenge for the Flames is going to be, did they just play junk all year? Because the Pacific Division is junk, and the West compared to the East, it's just not as good. It's pretty much junk. You have 2 teams. You have Calgary, you have Colorado. Look, if those 2 teams don't make the cup final, come back to this video and go, it didn't age well. Well, guess what, mother The Montreal Canadiens upset everybody and went all the way to the Cup Finals only to get trounced by the Tampa Bay Lightning. So, you know what? Happens. But the Calgary Flames and the Colorado Avalanche are the two classes of this division, and then it just falls off an absolute cliff. But Calgary may be the best team in the NHL. Lindholm is elite. Hanifin is elite. Markstrom is elite. Gaudreau is elite. Tkachuk and Toffoli. Tkachuk is elite and Toffoli is amazing. Backlund just barely doesn't check this box. He could check this box if you wanted to, but I'm going to be nitpicky with this. He doesn't check the box. He's not in the top 30, but he's damn good. The depth of the Calgary Flames at center is just fine. It may not be Stamkos in point, but Lindholm and Backlund, it's pretty good. It's pretty good, but it's not going to check the box. Sorry, got to stick to my list. Dubé and Mangiapane absolutely check the list. Anderson checks the list. Tanev checks the list. Killington checks the list. You get it? This team checks the list. They're dynamic. Moving over to their rival, the Edmonton Oilers. Ooh, Oiler fans are going to hate me for this. Call me a salty Jets fan all you want, but I'm sorry. This is what I see. You got McDavid, you got Nurse, you got Draisaitl, you got Nugent Hopkins, you got nobody else. It falls off after that. And Edmonton hates hearing the depth argument, but I'm sorry. It's what it is, and I'm going to take some time and walk you through it. McDavid's elite. Nurse, I think, is elite. He should not check this box. He's having a terrible year right now statistically, but he has to check this box. He's a horse that played a 60-minute game last year against Winnipeg. Nurse can carry this team as far as Nurse wants to go. He would have made Team Canada. He would have been a lock. I don't know what's going on with Nurse on the back end right now, but he's going to check the box, but he's playing bad. So, hey, look, you can hate it. I'll show you the proof. Top 10 goalie? Hell no. Don't talk to me about Smith, Koskinen, any of them. I'm sorry. It's not a good goaltender. It's like Toronto right now. Maybe they get hot, but we don't need to spend time on it. Puljujärvi, isn't he elite winger? He was close. He's having a good year, but I think he's a product of McDavid. So I'm going to go ahead and give it an X. Kane and Hyman, you're going to hate me for putting an X on this because Hyman's one of the best defensive forwards in the league, but he's not having a good year either. And Kane, as much as you think he's a revelation, he's actually a below replaceable level talent for Edmonton right now. And you may say, hey, ever since Kane and Woodcroft came in here, we've got wins. So ha, ha, ha. See you in the playoffs, man. Yeah, sure. See you in the playoffs. You might get through a round, but I just don't see this team competing with the Calgary Flames. Sorry. Cody Ceci does not check the box. Keith and Bouchard do not check the box. Bouchard is going to be a great up-and-coming defenseman. Kulak and Barrie absolutely check the box. So this is ridiculous. You have two amazing players in McDavid and Draisaitl who are carrying the team, and you have Kulak and Barrie who are playing on your far end that are playing out of their tree, but they're in your third pairing, and everybody in your top four is no good, and your middle six is no good, and that's no good. You can't have a weak middle six, and you can't have a weak top four, and you can't have no goalie and go anywhere. It's just not going to happen. But hey, prove me wrong, right? If they do, we're going to cover them the whole way, and I'll go ahead and eat crow. And just because, Edmonton fans, I think you're going to need to see the proof in the pudding here. Take a look. Tyson Barrie and Chris Russell are your two best defensemen right now, and then Brett Kulak. You can't have these three carrying you and expect to win a Stanley Cup, because when you search down here and you look at, oh my God, where is he? Darnell Nurse. He is a replaceable level player right now. That's a problem. That's not good. You can't be so top heavy in your bottom three. If we move over to forwards, it's the same thing. Look, Connor McDavid carries this team. Leon Draisaitl, people talk about this is the best player in the world, 50 goals. He's not even close to Austin Matthews or some of the guys like Johnny Gaudreau in terms of goals above replacement, just because of his awful defensive prowess right now. And yes, that's part of playing for Edmonton. But look at EVD. This is all defensive stats. The defensive stats for your top players are just atrocious. They're not good. So they're scoring at paces that are outscoring their defensive problems, but you just can't keep that up in the playoffs. It doesn't exist. Nugent Hopkins is the only guy up here. And again, they talk about him being a defensive forward, but again, take a look. His EVD defense, it's replaceable or below average. It's his offense that's carrying him on the third line. Jesse Puljujärvi, again, this 11.6 is really good. Like a GAR above 10 is really good. So I wanted to make Puljujärvi elite. But when you look through this, the defense until you get to Derek Ryan is it's just terrible. Even Zach Hyman, who prides himself on being a defensive forward, is negative 2.2 and only has a 1.9 GAR. So as you keep looking down this list, you can just see it just falls off an absolute cliff. So whether or not, Edmonton, you agree with me or disagree with me is irrelevant. The facts say what they say. It's just science, folks. And then two teams left to talk about, the LA Kings and the Vegas Golden Knights. What do you want me to say about these guys? What just an injury prone, between both of them. The LA Kings were my sweetheart darlings of the West, like the Bruins are in the East, to upset everything and screw everybody as a long shot. But they're not going to do that anymore, because do they even have a defenseman that's alive? I mean, Anderson and Doughty are out, and you're just like, oh my God, without those two, this just falls off an absolute cliff. Yes, you have Kopitar. He barely checks the box for an elite center. I have to put it in there because it's Kopitar, but like, he almost doesn't. If you don't have Anderson or Doughty, you cannot check the box for an elite defenseman. Quick is playing quite well. Lafello and Kempe, they do not check the box. Ardvison and Moore do check the box for two top wingers after that. So there's no elite winger. There's a questionable elite center right now. There's no elite defenseman. You have a top line center in Deneau, which is pretty good. And then your middle six completely falls off because everybody is injured again as well. I mean, Brown is out. Everybody's hurt. And then you look at the defensemen, and I just put in still dead. Like, are they still all dead? Are they ever going to come back? Like, I just feel horrible if you're an LA fan. It's totally fallen off the cliff. These guys may miss the playoffs because of these injuries. Even if they get fully healthy and into playoffs, I don't know what they're going to do at this point. But hey, they were one of the best teams that weren't scoring, and they were one of the best dark horse picks a month and a half ago, and then injuries just crushed them. And speaking of injuries, the Vegas Golden Knights, this is a team that time has passed by very quickly. There are a lot of names on this list, Knights fans, and people that aren't Knights fans, they're going to look at it and be like, they're super elite. What's going on? They're having a terrible year. Injuries or whatever aside, Mike Johnson said it on TSN, if these guys get healthy, oh my God, look out. I don't believe that. They have just totally not performed without Marc-Andre Fleury. It's fallen apart. Eichel's an elite center. Theodore would have made Team Canada. He should be an elite defenseman. He's not having a good year. He's having a terrible year. We can go to Evolving Hockey and show it, but at this point, I hope you believe me. He's just not having a good year. Robin Lehner is not a top 10 goalie. Sorry, that was the worst play ever to pay him $6 million and ditch Fleury out of there. Just terrible GMing by McCrimmon at that. He's one of the best, if not the best GMs in the league, by the way, but that was a huge mistake on his part. Elite winger, Pacioretty for sure, but he's day-to-day. Two top wingers, Stone and Smith, injured reserve, day-to-day. They would check the box. Are they even alive? Carlson is not a top 30 center right now. At the beginning of the year, I had him outside of it. He's had a terrible year. Two top six forwards in the middle six, Marchie, Dananoff, Roy. Yeah, sure, they check the box. Their depth has been tested here because of injuries. They better check the box for depth. McNabb is not a number one D-man playing there with Theodore. Pietrangelo has to check this box because he's Alex Pietrangelo. But like, he's having an awful year. Just like Nurse, he's having an absolutely terrible year. So you could argue not to check the box for Pietrangelo. He was one of 3 locks. He was given a spot on Team Canada. He is just not having a good year. Whitecloud's your best defenseman right now. He's playing in the bottom 6. It is just a mess. Whoever gets through in LA or in Vegas, I just think that's an absolute gift for the Edmonton Oilers right now. The Oilers getting to play LA or the Vegas Golden Knights right now, you're welcome, because those are just 3 teams that I look at. I don't like any of them. The fact that somebody gets to go through in a round as part of this round is just criminal, especially when you're looking at how the playoffs are set up otherwise. But hey, that's the way they go, and it'll make for great viewing. So you let me know, did I get it right? Do you like what's down below? What is your list? Comment, and hey, always let me know. I gotta know. Am I right or am I wrong? And we'll catch you in the next one, guys. Great having you.